Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, The Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. The Minnesota Twins are looking forward to another great season in 2023, led by the return of All-Stars Carlos Correa and Brian Buxton. With the return of numerous players who were injured in 2022 and some new acquisitions, another division crown and a return to the World Series are in their sights. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Welcome to Access to Democracy, and thanks for joining us. I'm Bill Raker, your host for this edition of the program. We're excited to welcome back on Access to Democracy Seth Boffeli, who's the Senior Fraud Prevention Advisor for AARP. Seth, welcome back to Access to Democracy.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bill.
You were on a guest on a program earlier where you shared some information and some thoughts with our viewers about how scammers use cryptocurrency. And I would remind our viewers that that edition of the program is archived on our webpage, accesstodemocracy.com, and also on YouTube if you'd like to go back and see that, review it, or see it again, see it if you missed it the first time. But Seth, you're with us today to talk about another area that scammers are using profusely these days, and perhaps even more so in the future, to trick and trap victims. We're going to be talking about access through artificial intelligence, how the scammers use AI.
Yeah. And thanks, Bill. I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity. As we all know, we are inundated from these scams every single day. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, what your background is. We're all targets. And scammers are always using the latest technology to make these attacks more sophisticated and to make it easier for us for them essentially to get into our wallet. So earlier this spring we talked about cryptocurrency and how that is becoming a cutting edge tool. Now AI is the next cutting edge tool, and we'll talk more about how they're really using this new technology to weaponize what already has been a pretty dangerous tactics.
Yeah, Seth, we want to get a little deeper into that to give a better understanding to our viewers. But before we do that, let's have a little refresher for the viewers about what the mission of AARP is and why AARP is interested in fighting fraud, and what your role with AARP is that supports that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, AARP is a nationwide membership and advocacy organization that works to improve the lives of Americans as we age, and that's everything from our health care, to our financial security, to the communities we live in. You know, in my role here, I mean, I started off working with AARP Minnesota. We are blessed to have AARP offices in all 50 states. But over the last 6 years, I've really worked in our national office to focus specifically on frauds and scams, because this is a national epidemic. People are targeted day in and day out on their phones, on their computers. Everywhere you go, you're potentially being targeted by a scammer, and so this is something that we need to educate on, we need to advocate for, and so it's really become a passion of mine, and working with folks like you to spread the word on programs like this is a real blessing.
How big is the scamming industry, if we could call it that, Seth? Do you have some statistics on that?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think the thing to understand, Bill, is that the vast majority of people who fall victim to a scam don't report it. So the data that we do have, which is alarming, is really just the tip of the iceberg. So nationally, the Federal Trade Commission does the best job of aggregating fraud reports. Nationally, the Federal Trade Commission reported that $9 billion in American consumer losses in 2022. Here in Minnesota, our share of that was $80.4 million. So almost $80.5 million left Minnesota economy, left the pockets of Minnesota consumers. The average victim in our state lost $600, Bill, and that's, you know, for a lot of them, especially those, you know, over the age of 70 and 80, that's money that they can't afford to lose.
And yet, that number seems to be growing, even with the education and the information and the warnings that we can see everywhere in the media. The size of the losses in the dollar amounts as well as the number of people victimized seems to be increasing. And now there's a newer tool that the scammers are starting to use. It's called artificial intelligence. So before we talk more specifically about how the scammers use it, maybe you can, for the layman, give us a brief description or introduction to what artificial intelligence is.
Yeah, you know, technology has really weaponized a lot of these scams. If you go back to before the pandemic, nationally, that reported loss was about $2 billion. In 3 short years, it's gone from $2 billion to $9 billion, and really technology has fueled it. So many of the things we do now are remote. They're over the internet. They're using technology. You know, whereas you might go to the bank in 2019, 2018 to cash a check, now you're kind of being almost forced to do it over a phone app. But artificial intelligence is really the next and maybe the most scary sort of phase of this. What we mean, or what they mean by artificial intelligence is really machine learning. Computers have grown so sophisticated that you can feed in human dialogue, human thought process, and really the entire internet, and these machines can generate the thought process so quickly that you have things like Chat GPT, where you can prompt them on, you know, something that you might want to say. You can give them a couple of subject matters and hit enter, and in a matter of seconds, maybe minutes, it can spit you out everything from a conversational Q&A. You know, we could prepare for our conversation here, Bill, by saying, you know, a 30-minute discussion around artificial intelligence covering fraud in the state of Minnesota, and hit enter, and it could probably script our whole conversation for us. Where it gets really scary is in this area they call deep fakes, which is voice and cloning and video cloning. And we see this a lot. You know, there's a lot of celebrity imposter scams out there where someone is, you know, send a message on, say, Facebook or Instagram by a celebrity that they've publicly liked. And this is a criminal saying, hey, you know, this is Toby Keith. I see you're a big fan, and here's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to support my cryptocurrency. You know, go to this link and invest. Or, you know, I'm supporting a charity, or maybe sometimes I even need money. Other times it's, I saw you online and I'm madly in love with you. And so when this is just sort of a static chat message, it can be a little bit easier to detect. But there are endless hours of video of these celebrities out there, and now with these deep fakes, you can actually make a video and send it to you, Bill, directly, and you can make that celebrity pretty much say anything you want them to say. So now, for that fan who might be susceptible to being victimized, that attack is just a lot more realistic and a lot more hard. It's a lot harder to say, no, I think this is a fake, because you're looking at a video of that person that you have a lot of respect for and fanship for, making a personal appeal to you. And so it really, that's the other thing. These criminals are trained psychological manipulators. They know how to get to our area. They know how to get us excited. They know how to get us enticed. And with these really sophisticated technologies, they can make those attacks even more believable.
Well, recently I heard Lynn Kahn, who's the chair of the FTC, make a comment, and she said that artificial intelligence is turbocharging fraud. Do you have a couple of examples of how artificial intelligence really is turbocharging fraud and scams?
Yeah, and so that's a great quote, and I think just to kind of set the stage, we aren't seeing these in practice a lot right now, but we know they're coming. And so this is kind of an opportunity where not just individuals, but businesses and the government can start to get our ducks in a row and start to prepare for the wave that we're coming. So I'll give you one example from an individual and one example from a business. For an individual, one of the oldest scams that we've dealt with at AARP, we call the grandparent scam. So you get a phone call and it says, "Grandpa, is this you? Grandpa, I'm in trouble." And you say, "Johnny, is this Johnny?" "Yeah, it's Johnny. Grandpa, I was on spring break in Mexico and I got in a car crash and I'm in the hospital and I need money right away," or "I got in trouble and I'm in jail and I need you to bail me out." And you say, "Johnny, that doesn't sound like you." "Well, I broke my nose," or there's always a story. Now, if we find 15 seconds, that's all it really takes, Bill, is 15 seconds of somebody's voice. A scammer can go on, say, social media, and Johnny might be posting a lot of content to social media. Now they can get your grandson's actual voice. They can put it into one of these chat bots. They can program it to say anything they want. They can be talking to you, and the voice that's coming out of the other end of the phone is your loved one. So now that attack that you might be suspicious about before sounds hyper realistic. You feel like you are talking to your grandchild. They are in danger, and you're going to do anything you can do to get them out. So that's where, it's not a new scam. It's really kind of an old scam, but it has this new twist that makes it hyper realistic and very scary. Now, flipping to the other side, say a business or the government, and I saw this, this is something that Social Security Administration is starting to prepare for, but a lot of times you go online, say your bank or a business, and you want to get something done from a customer service standpoint, your first option, or maybe sometimes your only option, is to interact with one of these chat box. A window pops up and it says, "How can we help you? I have an account problem." And so you're really interfacing with another side of AI. It's the company is using AI to sort of streamline their customer service process. So they have some prompts put in there. Now these criminals can actually kind of weaponize these chat bots where they can go in and say, "Hey, I'm Bill Raker. I need to change the mailing address for my Social Security checks." Maybe they have a couple of pieces of personal information that they got on you in a data breach. But the criminals can basically use these computers to run these chatbot attempts en masse. They don't have to do it, "Okay, I'm going to do John Smith, and then when I'm done with John Smith, I can do Bill Raker." They can feed every name and all the personal information they have, and then push a button that says go and launch all of these things simultaneously against either the Social Security Administration's customer service center, or maybe your bank or a retailer. And so that's again where the ability of these computers to process data so quickly, but not just process data, to form a conversation that doesn't sound like a computer, it sounds like a person, is just, again, one of those things that's really scary because it's out of your control. Your information might have been compromised. It's out there on the dark web. A criminal gets a bunch of it, puts it into a computer system, uses ChatGPT to make it seem authentic, and then just hits click a button and sends like these waves at companies. And again, sometimes it's not our money lost, but in the case of the Social Security Administration, it is our money lost. It's the government's money's lost.
Right.
And in some cases, maybe they're diverting that check from your bank to their bank, and then that's a big problem.
So it only takes 10 or 15 seconds of capturing my voice or anyone's voice, where this artificial intelligence software or these machines can then generate a whole conversation that sounds like it's my voice and that it's coming from me. That's so powerful and so threatening. It's kind of scary. But when you were talking about authentication, it brought to mind another situation. Many organizations, financial institutions that I know of, are using as a second verification voice, your voice. I mean, I call one of my providers, and the automated system will say, say a few more words so that we can authenticate your voice. Well, with artificial intelligence, someone may be able to imitate my voice perfectly and crack into one of those systems that uses voice verification.
It is definitely, if you are looking at biometrics, you do have to look at things that are harder. So whether it's a retinal scan or a thumb fingerprint scan, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just that the most common form of two-factor authentication, what they talk, is I log in with my password, and then that website sends a code to my phone.
That's very common, yeah.
And that's actually a little safer because it's hard. You can't mimic having my phone. No AI software. Now there are probably some attempts that maybe try to intercept that code before it gets to me, but things like that tend to be a little safer. But I think, Bill, the other thing is we have to be a little safer about what we put out into the universe, and things like having privacy protections on our social media accounts, so not just anybody can see it. It's the source material, and I think the other thing too is that if you get that call and you think it is your grandson, in any case you want to hang up and call back to verify, but even more so, the more realistic you think it is, the more important it is that you verify it independently. Sometimes it's about having a safe word within your family or asking a question that only your grandson would know. But more often than not, the easiest thing to do is just to hang up that phone, call your loved one at the number, or call your bank at the number that you know is their legitimate number, and verify whether it's real or not.
Well, Seth, I'm beginning personally to see some examples of how artificial intelligence is improving the scammers' ability to trick me and to trick other people out there. Many of us, most of us, probably get these phishing emails that's from Amazon or UPS or the Geek Squad or one of the virus protection, Norton or McAfee. And you can, if you eye it very carefully, you can see that it's not legitimate. However, I've noticed recently, as I continue to get more and more of these, that I think artificial intelligence is now making these emails, even though they're fake, to look much more authentic and to be much more effective than they used to be.
And it really is ChatGPT, and I think about the high school English teacher that maybe over the years had to suffer through some pretty atrocious compositions, and maybe all of a sudden their life is easier, but also makes it easier to spot. Johnny didn't write that good 2 years ago, and I don't think he's been studying at home. But and I think the other thing, Bill, is kind of the punchline, that foreign prince email that we've all been getting for years. One of the things that makes that so comical is just the grammatical obvious errors. And that has been a hallmark of one way to keep yourself safe is just look for those obvious grammatical errors. And you're right, they are going away. And so that red flag tool that was so handy for so many of us really might not exist anymore in a year or two.
Well, Seth, one of the things we want to share with our viewers are some red flags or some hints about what might tip someone off that even though this phishing attempt or this voice recording is bogus, what might tip us off that would cause us to be cautious and not click on that link or fall for that temptation?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to understand, Bill, is what the scammer is trying to do is get us, we call it at AARP being under the ether. They're trying to get us into a heightened emotional state where we're not processing things in the way we normally would. And it's hard, before you know it, you're there. You can't always say, wait a minute, somebody's trying to trigger me. More often than not, you're triggered. Oh my God, Susie's in trouble. I got to get her help right away. I can hear her voice and she's crying or she's screaming. She's in pain. I can fix this, or I need to fix this. So sometimes that circuit breaker becomes when they ask for money, and it's specifically how they ask for money. So things like prepaid gift card. Grandpa, I'm in jail and I need you to pay my bill by going to Target and getting me $500 in prepaid Amazon cards. Well, that's not how normal people pay for debts or obligations. So if anybody ever asks you to pay for a gift card, that's a red flag, that's a scam. We talked before about crypto. There are these cryptocurrencies, ATMs sort of everywhere. So if anybody tells you to go to the grocery store or the gas station and find an ATM where you can put in your credit card and scan a little QR code to send them money, that's another red flag. So the way, the scams are changing, they're getting more realistic, but there's still only 3 or 4 ways that they're going to ask for money. And when you hear those, that's when you know it's a scam. That's when you know to hang up the phone and verify independently. And if they ask for your credit card information or your banking account information, that's another big no-no.
Well, hopefully the information that we're sharing today will alert our viewers, and they'll be more cautious and more careful in how they interact with things coming across social media, like whether it's a text or on Facebook or TikTok or whatever it is. But if someone suspects a scam has happened or is about to take place, what do you suggest? What do you recommend that people do? Yeah,
and so we're going to put a few numbers up on the screen. So if folks have a pen at home, this is a good time to write these numbers down. But the first thing to understand is that you don't have to be dumb or old or in cognitive decline to quote unquote fall for these scams. As we just explained, these are really sophisticated. These are professional criminals, and so they are going to get into some people's wallets. There are going to be victims, and if you're a victim, AARP has a toll-free helpline that you can contact. You can talk to a volunteer who is trained in working with victims. They can get you connected. Here in Minnesota, there's great resources both in the Commerce Department and the Attorney General's office. And I think one thing that's important, Bill, to understand is once the money's gone, it's hard to get back. But it's important to report because we need to know. We don't know the scope of the problem until we know how many victims there are out there. And the other thing is you need more than just financial or law enforcement help. It's an emotional event that happens to a victim. It can be isolating. It can be really devastating mentally. And so being open about it, reporting about it is the best way to get the support that you need.
So we know if someone wants to find out more information about scams that use AI or just the more traditional technology that's still in use, AARP Fraud Watch Network is a website where there's lots of information available. Could you talk a little bit about that?
And thanks for mentioning. It's AARP.org/FraudWatch Network. It really is kind of a one-stop shop for information. There's fact sheets on over 80 different types of scams, so you can see the hallmarks, what the red flags are, what to do if you may have fallen victim. There's also, you can sign up for every other week we send out an alert to either your email or your phone to let you know about a breaking scam that's happening, what to be on the lookout for, and how to spot it. There's a podcast on there if you're into podcasts. So it's a lot of great information. We always say if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. And so a lot of times knowing those red flags, knowing what to look out for is the best way to protect yourself from falling victim.
Well, hopefully our viewers got that information. We had the couple of phone numbers on the screen for the Department of Commerce and the Attorney General here in Minnesota, which are also good sources of information about scams and where to report scams if you are a victim or you know someone who has been a victim. Any final words as we wrap up here with the last minute or so, Seth?
I think two things. One is it's important to understand that these are crimes. We tend to have a lot more empathy for somebody who's, stuck up in the parking lot for $50 in their wallet than we do to somebody who loses $500,000. This is a crime. It should be treated as a crime, and the victim deserves just as much empathy. And then the last thing is just be skeptical. We live in a society where you just can't take anything at face value anymore, especially if they're asking for money. Be skeptical, hang up the phone, do your homework before you open up your wallet.
Verify.
Exactly. Verify.
Thank you, Seth. Our guest has been Seth Boffeli with AARP, the Fraud Prevention Specialist Advisor at AARP. Thank you for sharing with us and our viewers information about how scammers are using artificial intelligence and giving us some resources that we can follow to get more information or to report a scam. So, Seth, thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Great to have you as our guest.
Yeah.